Are you the go-to problem solver in your marriage and often at the expense of your own well-being? Today, we're discussing codependency, a relationship dynamic that can silently erode your self-esteem and family harmony. Today, you're going to learn how to recognize and overcome these behaviors for a healthier, happier family life. Welcome back to Fulfillment Therapy. I'm your host, Kendra Nielsen, and today we're exploring a topic that affects so many marriages and so many of my clients. It's codependency. We're going to examine what it looks like, how it impacts relationships, and most importantly, how to break free from its grip. I wanted to talk about this again today because I have talked about it in past episodes, but it's something that continually comes up. And clients ask for more information as well as listeners, so I thought I would tackle it again from a slightly different angle. I want to start with a story from clients, and I'm going to use different names here. But this one is about Emily and Mark. Now, this couple has been married for about 15 years, and Emily has always prided herself on being a very supportive wife. She really would drop everything to help her husband, Mark, with his work projects, with whatever it might be, often sacrificing her own interests and friendships in the process, without even necessarily realizing that she was. Now, Mark, at first in the relationship, was very appreciative, but then he started to expect it. And he'd frequently call Emily at inconvenient times, and he'd ask her to do things that she didn't necessarily have time for, considering what was on her plate, like maybe proofreading reports or bringing him dinner at the office and things like that. And Emily felt needed, and she went along with it every time. Even if it meant canceling her own plans or staying up late, whatever it was, she was there for him, which in some ways is really admirable and in other ways creates major dysfunction and this unhealthy relationship dynamic, as well as a decreased quality of life. So this is codependency in action. It gives you a snapshot of what it actually looks like. Dr. Melody Beattie is a well-known expert on this subject. She defines codependency as a person who has let another person's behavior affect him or her and who is obsessed with controlling that person's behavior. Now, it might not always be obvious, but I'm going to break it down a little bit so you can understand common signs of codependency in marriages and determine maybe if it's something that you could work on yourself. Is there this excessive caretaking? So this goes beyond normal support. For instance, a codependent spouse might constantly sacrifice their own needs, so always putting their partner first, even to their own detriment. So that could mean skipping important work meetings or neglecting their own health to care for their spouse who refuses to seek help for their own problems. Now that shows up in so many ways, it's hard to identify all of those ways, but is that something you notice yourself doing? Maybe you never go to the gym in the morning because you know your spouse doesn't really love getting the kids on the bus and he feels a little overwhelmed by it. So you take one for the team over and over because you don't want anyone else to feel put out and you allow it to affect your mental health or your physical health. So that's just one example. Codependent people have difficulty setting boundaries. A codependent person struggles to say no or to express their own needs. They might agree to things like social events that they don't enjoy just to please their partner or their spouse. And they even tolerate very disrespectful behavior without really speaking up. They often have low self-esteem, but it might not always be apparent to other people. And they base their worth on their partner's approval. They're often seeking that validation and asking questions like, do you think I look okay today? Did I do a good job? Like all of these things to get that reinforcement that they are still acceptable to their spouse. They often have a fear of abandonment. This can show up as clingy behavior in that spouse or an inability to spend that time apart. I know I see that one a lot with my clients. They often never take trips apart, especially one of them feels very anxious and does everything they can to prevent that. They might feel incredibly anxious anytime that they are away and will quickly seek to be reunited. Dr. John Gottman is a renowned relationship expert. I've mentioned him many times, and he said this: codependency is often rooted in childhood experiences, where a person learned to suppress their own needs to gain love and approval. And I think that's how I see it the most with my clients. They don't even know what their own needs are because they've shoved them down for so long. They grew up in an environment where it wasn't okay to share your needs. So instead, they just learned to meet the needs of others. Now let's look at how codependency becomes a dance in marriage. Let's go back to my story of my clients, Emily and Mark. Remember, fictional names here. When Emily was constantly available, that reinforced Mark's expectations of her support. He got really used to that and just came to need it and demand it and expect it. And over time, he became more demanding, knowing that Emily would always comply. I'm sure as I'm sharing these scenarios, you're thinking of your sister-in-law or your friend or somebody else, but we all have some of this in ourselves. So I encourage you to look inwardly as always. The thing with codependency is it's not just one partner. It's both that are playing that dance. And both people are involved in keeping that unhealthy dynamic. And both people are responsible for maintaining that unhealthy dynamic in that home. For example, if Mark forgets an important deadline at work, Emily will likely stay up all night to help him finish that project and neglect her own rest and her own responsibilities. Now, Mark might appreciate that a little bit, but he doesn't learn how to manage his time better because Emily swoops in to save him every time, so he doesn't learn his lesson. There's not that natural consequence. That just perpetuates that cycle. Now, if you recognize any of these codependent patterns in your marriage, you're probably wondering, what can I do to get out of that? The first part is just recognizing what's happening, making note of it, journaling it, like really having it sink in, doing that deep dive with podcast episodes, with books, with whatever you can to not just notice it, but to do something about it. Maybe even journal about instances where you notice it come up, where you're getting into that unhealthy pattern. Another crucial part of codependent relationships is setting healthy boundaries. And this is where I spend a lot of time helping my clients because they get really stuck here, especially when they haven't done this most of their lives. I have one client that said something like, okay, I just need super baby steps. Like talk to me almost like I'm an elementary student because I have not ever set boundaries and it's so new to me and so scary. So we just do the very basic and work on that. So start small. If your partner asks you to run an errand when you're busy, practice saying, I'm sorry, I can't do that right now, but I can help you later if you still need it. Now that's just a small baby step in the right direction, you'll eventually get better. And I want to say, I think this was me for a long time in the beginning of our marriage. And I thought that I was doing it right by self-sacrificing, over-serving, all of these things, but I was losing myself in the process. I didn't even realize it was a problem. And slowly but surely, I learned to do these things. And I know that you can too once you become self-aware of what's going on. Another quick way that I did that is I know that my husband was often overwhelmed. He was in grad school, but he was overwhelmed by the young kids and all of those things. So I'd sometimes get a babysitter just to go do something that I needed to go do instead of having him do it because I felt so guilty if he had to do his homework. I didn't really treat him like an equal partner. And I was part of that problem. I think he would have been more willing, even though it would have been uncomfortable for him. But I instead never gave him the opportunity to learn how to manage that anxiety with being around several young children that are crying. And I could have done that much sooner. And I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. If you feel like this is a big issue in your life, please seek help. This is such a tricky dynamic, and a therapist can really help you break that down and change those cycles if you're not able to do it yourself. Dr. Sherry Jacobson is a psychotherapist, and she said this: recovery from codependency involves learning to love yourself first, which then allows for healthier relationships with others. That is such a crucial part of it. It truly is. And as you increase that self-esteem by starting with those baby steps and learning to say no, practicing that greater independence, that can really improve it. But it does take time. Now, I do want to briefly talk about your kids. So children learn relationship patterns from their parents. So if this has been a problem for you, then it might be with your children as well. So in that codependent household, they might internalize unhealthy ideas about themselves and their self-worth. For example, they might learn that their needs are less important than other people's, or that love means constantly sacrificing oneself. So to break that cycle in your home, you can model those healthy boundaries for your kids, and you can show them that it's okay to say no. You can encourage independence and allow them to make decisions for themselves and solve their own problems, and teach them about self-care and maintaining their own identity. Now, that is harder than it sounds. but it's all about modeling. All right, let's wrap up a few of those key points to really solidify them in your brain. Codependency in marriage involves excessive caretaking, poor boundaries, and a loss of individual identity. It's both partners playing a role in maintaining those codependent patterns, and recovery involves self-awareness and setting boundaries and prioritizing that self-care, learning to say no, things like that. Breaking those codependent patterns benefits the entire family, so not just the couple, but everyone. Breaking free from this will improve all of your relationships, and it is never too late to start this journey. I hope this helped you today and that you feel like there's one small thing that you can do to take your family life to the next level and to change these patterns of codependency in your family life. Don't forget to check out our courses for mental health and wellness, as well as business courses to start your own online business and podcast. You can check those out on our website at fulfillmenttherapy.org, or check out the show notes, and you can find us in all the places from social media to the website to anything else so that you can reach us as needed. I'll see you back here with new episodes every Monday and Thursday. Until then. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, chances are someone else would too. Would you take 30 seconds to share this with a friend who's looking for greater family fulfillment? And while you're sharing, tell me what you think about the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It refuels me when I hear this podcast is helping you, no matter what your house or your hair looks like. I'll meet you back here every Monday and Thursday morning for more episodes. Until then.